Will 2024 be a breakthrough year for XR and spatial computing? We want it. We feel it. We're anxious about it. After 15 years or more of ups and downs, is 2024 just another year of hype, or are we really getting there? To answer these questions, we go head to head on the 10 big trends of 2024, the promises and the perils of XR this year. Hey everyone, I'm Ori Inbar. Thank you all for joining us. Please share your thoughts and opinions and questions in the chat. This will be awesome. How do I know? Because we have someone very special with me today. Put your hands together for the one and only Tom Emrich. Hey, Tom.
Hi, everybody. Spatial and special. I love that. I need a t-shirt.
You know, folks, I met Tom in 2014, which is now 10 years. It was on a panel about smart glasses that he was running quite brilliantly, I must say. And I was like, this guy is smart and he loves AR as much as I do. So, you know, we went on to jointly produce AW events for several years. And in 2016, we started Super Ventures together with Matt Meisnix and Mark Billinghurst. It was the first fund, one of the first funds dedicated to investing in early stage XR startups. These were great times, the age of VR exuberance, where anything with VR in its name got money thrown at it, or the .VR era. And in 2019, Tom went on to head product at Eighth Wall, which was acquired a few years later by Niantic. So I'm so happy for you, Tom. Looks like you're happy.
I am.
How does it feel to work for arguably the most successful AR company in history?
Well, Ori, got to catch them all. I mean, it's great working at Niantic. I've thoroughly enjoyed my journey with you, as you mentioned, building a community at AWE, investing in startups, and now working with developers to equip them with tools to create augmented reality, both in the browser and for native apps as a director of product for AR platforms at Niantic. And so one of the things that I get to do is wake up every day and just see what developers are doing with our tools to make the browser a powerful place for AR, but also to bring, you know, mixed reality, spatial awareness, using visual positioning systems to mobile augmented reality applications. So I'm having a great time, and just to be able to work in augmented reality, I have to say, has been a dream. Meeting you was a major opportunity that opened doors. So I got to thank you for, you know, everything you've done for me.
Come on.
And many others, I'm sure, that are watching. So
thank you, Tom. Brilliant answer as always. Now let's get into it. You know, when I posted this event on LinkedIn with the title, Will 2024 be a breakthrough year for XR? I got a virtual slap from a VR veteran that I admire, Professor Bob Stone. And he protested, stop with this hype. Every bloody year has been a breakthrough year for XR. And it's at least for the past decade, if not more. And you know what? He was totally right. Tom, you and I, we've been evangelizing XR for a few hype cycles now. And I think, you know, you and I know that it's always important to try and find a way to kind of focus the community, to rally the crowds around certain things during the ups and downs, because they're inevitable. And there were many, you know, if you look back just in the past 15 years, 2010, huge hype around AR browsers and Vuforia, and then 2013, Google Glass. And of course, we know what happened. In 2015, Oculus acquisition, Pokemon Go, Snapchat Lens, all pointing up and then kind of flattening at some point. And then, you know, 2019, VR gets real with standalone Quest, huge promise, and then winter. And of course, 2021 with the Metaverse craze, which we know where it's at right now. So Tom, is 2024 really different? Will it be a breakthrough year for XR? What's your take?
Well, what I would say is that whether you like it or not, hype cycles exist. And so you need to figure out ways to, as you mentioned, energize your industry, your community, your clients, and use those hype cycles to your advantage is what I would say. I think this is a different year, however, for XR. And, outside of the hype, technologies continue to iterate and evolve. While we want them to be ready and mass adopted tomorrow, they tend to take a journey to get to that kind of iPhone moment, for example. I think the reason why this is a breakthrough year for XR in particular this year is because of the mixed reality headset category coming together. This is a brand new headset category. In my 24 for 24 trends, I was bold and said that this is the year that we see the virtual reality head-mounted display die. And taking its place is the mixed reality headset. And what I mean by that is the default now is a HMD that does both AR and VR. And I think by unifying the two sides of the coin, which have always been there, into one device, it doubles the opportunity for developers, it doubles the opportunity for investors, and it also doubles the value potential for consumers, which is most important. And so this brand new category, it's also becoming a category. That's the other thing that's changed. And so Meta has done a tremendous job in the Meta Quest that has now gone into its third generation since it's become a consumer device, now a mixed reality headset. But it's being joined now February 1st with Apple Vision Pro, Samsung, Google, Qualcomm expected to come out with its own device. We just saw this week something from LG might be in the works. And so having a category is also quite different than what we've seen before. So for those that have been waiting for AR glasses, these might not be what you may have expected when you've been, holding your breath for that outdoor, everyday, all day pair of eyewear, but the AR consumer headset opportunity is becoming a today thing.
Yeah, we'll talk more about these two things in more detail. But I want to, actually give a bit more of a macro level perspective. 2023 was really a tough year with fears around inflation and recession and tons of layoffs in tech and especially in XR and projects being killed, like Altspace and others. And what we're seeing this year and even at the end of last year is that there's a recovery in the world economy. Recession has probably been averted. Inflation is down, at least in the US. Funding is back. According to PitchBook, margins are improving. Valuations are increasing. Great conditions for M&A, which is always good for our industry. And when you look at the XR market specifically, besides the bunch of new headsets that are reaching the market, of course, there's Apple, which we'll talk more about, which is a huge impact on just the interest that the whole market has into XR and spatial computing. Mm-hmm. And of course, can't not mention AI that is, I think, now being put into good use to accelerate all the aspects of XR and make it better and more valuable. And if you look at some of the analyst predictions like IDC, they say that 2024 will be a pivotal year for XR, and they're already predicting 46% growth in the AR/VR headset sales. Mm-hmm. Of course, that's after somewhat of a dip in 2023. But still, that's a significant growth that we're looking at this year. And actually, if you look at the AR glasses shipments, they're predicting 85% growth compared to last year. And that's just mind-blowing, kind of talking about what you mentioned with the AR glasses. And you just returned from CES, which actually had very enthusiastic coverage of XR. I saw a quote in Wire that said, the mixed reality glasses market is blowing up. There was a quote at CNET that said, mixed reality is having a moment. Mm-hmm. It's not always positive, but it's interesting. So what was your impression? Did it feel like there's a breakthrough for XR at CES?
Certainly the Sony announcement was probably the biggest thing that happened with mixed reality. I would say my experience at CES, I always enjoy walking the floor and seeing what's happening with fridges and washing machines and cars alongside our industry. Like, it's really important to get a viewpoint on everything. The XR areas were quite light. So I would say that if you were at CES this year, probably fast forward to next year, you're going to be seeing a lot more activity, and certainly, you'll see much more on the AWE floor in June. But the buzz was around mixed reality. And Apple did a very Apple-like thing, as The Verge succinctly put, and stole the show by making their big announcement about pre-orders this Friday, February 1st being the ship date for US for Apple Vision Pro. That's what set off a lot of the spatial computing conversation, and we'll get into that. But essentially, that was the start of CES, was about Apple's mixed reality headset, followed by Sony's announcement of it getting into mixed reality, specifically focusing on designers and spatial design, with a very unique controller, by the way, that looks like a turkey wishbone, in my opinion, but it looks pretty cool. It's a smart ring and like a Y-shaped controller. I've never seen it before. And so there was a lot of buzz, a lot of talk around mixed reality. At the same time, I would say the biggest demo on the floor was from Xreal, that had just announced their Air 2 Ultra. That isn't mixed reality, not to mince words, but is really an optical see-through device that has now a 52-degree field of view, and electrochromic dimming that has the ability to do AR and VR in a different way. And so I think the media in particular that goes to these events to see through the trends, I think they were seeing this come together, that glasses in particular are coming back in style. And this also includes wearables that don't have displays, like the Meta Ray-Ban, that make use of AI, which I know we'll talk about in a sec. But I think that it's starting to paint a picture that the wearable technology in general is most likely back.
I saw a record number of people taking selfies with Palmer Luckey this year, so that's something too. That leads us to our second big trend that we want to touch on today. When we were planning this event, you said we should call it the year of spatial computing. What did you mean with that?
Well, I mean, spatial computing is not a new term to you and to the industry, but I meant that when we look at the hype cycle, just going back to the hype cycle, I strongly believe that this year's technology media darling will be spatial computing. And we'll see a lot of discourse, a lot of attention, a lot of articles talking about spatial computing, and primarily that be related to a spatial computer debuted by Apple. So Apple's entry into spatial computing, into mixed reality, is a very big deal, as we know, for our industry, and they have set the tone for new terms, at least new terms for the media to use, by avoiding the use of AR, VR, XR, MR, but instead adopting spatial computing, spatial computing apps.
That's really interesting you're saying that, because I wanted to have some fun and show what I said about spatial computing in 2019 at AWE. Let's play this video, Goopy, and then we can. 2019, can you believe it?
For 50 years,
the jacket is always epic.
It's been a two-dimensional representation of a three-dimensional world. In December 1968, Engelbert introduced the mother of all demos. It wasn't designed for how our brains are wired. During that same time, in 1968, another breakthrough demo was presented. Ivan Satterland presented the principles of spatial computing.
Sword.
A three-dimensional display in which the image of an object would change in exactly the same way the image of a real object would change for similar motions of the head. Computing imitating real life, it's finally native to our species. It empowers us to communicate through our natural senses, to interact in space like humans did in the million years before the mother of all demos. Do you notice, by the way, that we haven't talked about AR, VR, or XR so far?
Ahead of us.
We prefer to use the overarching term of spatial computing. AR, VR, MR, XR, these are all, and a lot of AI, by the way, are
Almost
all
forgot.
tech terms that are enabling the creation of spatial computing. And the word spatial is really what separates this new wave from all the previous ones.
I think that's what Apple is going for, that separation from the previous wave. But also, everybody's been using AR and VR and for a long time, and it felt like there's sort of a ceiling, maybe 30% max of people would actually adopt these kind of technologies, but it feels like there's almost a limit to go beyond that. And I think Apple kind of with their change of terms, but also the kind of change of how it all is presented and positioned is really to try to get to the rest of us out there.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, look, like spatial computing are two words that most people know. It's like space and computing. And so it's a space computer. So it's a computer that has something to do with space. So I think it automatically evokes like a change within something that we're already using. It double downs on computing. So it indicates that we are entering that next era, that we're entering that next phase. I know that, it seems as though Apple is focused on using spatial computer for the Apple Vision Pro. We'll see what more they attach to it. But as you pointed out, it really is an umbrella term that it is all about the perception, the interaction, the navigation of computers within 3D space. And so what I love about it is that we can start talking about the next wave of computing to embrace all of the change that's happening, autonomous vehicles, robotics, large vision models, multimodal AI. Like there's a lot going on within spatial computing in addition to augmented reality, virtual reality, and mixed reality. And it's all of this that's going to move us into that next phase. And so I think it also helps, I think, really paint the picture of what the opportunity is ahead of us. And I think from an investor standpoint, a developer standpoint, an organizational standpoint, that opportunity will be large enough for them to buy in on it. So that's what excites me about the use of the word spatial computing. Not like we necessarily need another term, because I know we've all been
exactly
a lot of terms. So I can already hear people.
Maybe we'll touch on it a bit later. But actually brings us to another term that you mentioned as probably the reason for the breakthrough that we're expecting this year. And by the way, mixed reality has been originally defined as the entire spectrum, from reality all the way to virtual reality, where AR is somewhere in between. And then you had, and in 2013, when Google Glass came out, they used the term AR as the technology, which it wasn't exactly AR. But then when HoloLens came out and Magic Leap came out, they had to differentiate it from Google Glass, which at that point was already a failure from a market adoption perspective. So they decided to use the term mixed reality to show this is better than what you think is AR, which of course confused the heck out of everybody. And now we have all these acronyms. And at some point, I think it was probably 2018, the industry agreed to use the term XR as sort of our umbrella for AR, VR, instead of just saying all these acronym soup. Which added, of course, another term. So now we're trying to, or I guess with Apple's leadership, they're trying to kind of clean it all up. But mixed reality has emerged as kind of its own thing, like you said, an important factor for 2024.
Yeah.
So what does it mean to you, and what does it mean to the market this year?
Well, one thing I will say is, XR, and I know we had many conversations around the use of XR when we worked together. I wrote about this and said that XR came out of exhaustion of saying AR, VR, MR. Exactly. And if you're in the space enough, you're like a pirate, right? You're like RRR, and so you want to consolidate it down to just like XR. Still to this day, I don't know if everybody's on the same page with what X is. Is X like the kind of like a variable, or is it extended reality? So I understand, especially if you've been in the space for a while, you know, there's just a lot of language and a lot of terms that we get caught up on. You know, mixed reality, I would say that mixed reality for the most part is being used to indicate augmented reality on a virtual reality device. I think that most people experience it that way. Certainly mixed reality is what's being used to describe the augmented reality experience on MetaQuest 3. And even though Apple's not adopting that term, like the media is following suit to describe you know, the Apple Vision Pro like experiences as mixed reality, Sony using mixed reality. You know, for me, you know, what I like about mixed reality is that it is indicating that augmented reality has moved to a new phase of its journey that is much more spatially aware, that is much more immersive, that is much more interactive than other forms of augmented reality that we've seen even on mobile in the past. Or as you mentioned, you know, more heads-up display like information-driven augmented reality use cases. And so I kind of described it to someone as like layers of abstraction. So if you saw a game on a MetaQuest 3 that was a mixed reality game, you could say that is an example of spatial computing, and it's true. You could say it's an example of augmented reality, and it's true. And you could say that it's an example of mixed reality, and it's true. It's just that when you say mixed reality, you know automatically that it's a more sophisticated, more advanced, you know, flavor of augmented reality that must be interacting more with the space. I think the word mixed is like really important, because to me, mixed means that the augmented reality experience is truly using the space or the face of, or the thing of which it's rooted in, rather than.
And I think for many people, it's starting to be used as something between AR and VR, right? I mean, again, if you look at it the most simplistic way, that's probably a good way to look at it. And like I said, you know, it's really kind of a better way to use AR. You know, we couldn't use AR glasses the way we have it so far for the AR that we want. So I think most manufacturers have got to a point where pass-through AR or AR on VR hardware is the way to go. And if you know, let's put up the slide with all the headsets, the mixed reality headsets. You see, all these just came out in the last few months, and they're 100% mixed reality headsets. A lot better, a lot nicer, a lot faster, but all of them are mixed reality, which is pointing kind of to your assertion that, you know, this is going to be the year of mixed reality, and it's giving a lot of new opportunities. Again, I mean, if we're thinking about some of the population that would not want to get into VR and be blocked from the world, this is the way to do it. Because, you know, even if you look at the Vision Pro, by default it's AR. So you put it on, you still see everything around you, and only then you can start adding some content to it. And it feels like it's a lot easier for people to get into this world than completely be isolated from the real world.
100%. I mean, going into the Quest 3 now, where the default is I can still see my room, makes it feel less isolating, more safe. It's like a much more friendly approach. People still want to see the world and then choose to take it away if they want by jumping.
It's interesting, you know, in the Vision Pro, there's no need to create a boundary around your room, because again, by default, you see everything and people when they get close to you. So that's I think that will, in that sense, it will definitely improve or help penetrate a broader audience than what we've seen with the current devices.
Yeah, and Ori, that point about not having to create room boundaries, that spatial awareness is a big step change as well. And so with Quest 3 as well, you don't need to, you know, scan your room. You just look around your room, and then that that room is available for applications to make sense of and make the content feel real. That's what's happening with the Apple Vision Pro. That's why I understand the use of the word mixed reality, because the room is actually being mapped and it's being used. That's a table, that's a chair. The content is in between or under, and content can react different on table versus chair.
The same for business or industrial and enterprise use cases, where in most cases it will be more relevant to use this kind of approach versus a virtual reality, which it's great for training, but in real life work environments, you got to see what's happening around you and the people around you.
Yeah.
So that brings us to our next trend, number 4. We managed to spend 20 minutes without digging into AI. So let's it's clear that for years XR and AI are inseparable, really critical to each other. Even since 2016, 2017, when there was some breakthroughs in machine learning, and that immediately was used for AR, to improve tracking. I remember, applications for changing the color of your hair. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, it was like 100 times better. Same thing for, trying on sneakers or watches, something that computer vision alone was not enough to solve these problems. And all of a sudden, it was incredibly better, including also, scanning and capturing things in 3D that all of a sudden became so much better. So from your perspective, what do you make of the impact that the combination of AI and XR have on the spatial computing market?
Yeah, I think this is important to talk about. And that between the two of us, we know that we've been talking about AI all along. I think I still love this tweet that our good friend Matt Meisniks put out a while back that said that AR and VR is the GUI of AI, and it's stuck with me ever since. And so even thinking about hype cycles, to read a headline that says AI has won over AR is a little hilarious, because they're all intertwined, and certainly computer vision, which is like the backbone of augmented reality, is artificial intelligence and machine learning in some way. So I think that we're seeing a couple things happening in the AI space that's quite exciting for XR. The first is in its ability on the Gen AI side to really help rapidly accelerate development and prototyping. And so especially around 3D asset creation, I was blown away. I was looking back at the beginning of 2023 and at the end of 2023 with solutions like Luma AI's Genie, for example, on prompt-based generative 3D media. That's a very specialized skill for many, and will continue to be for a while. And certainly it's early days for Gen AI to be used for 3D, just in terms of the quality of the asset, but to be able to generate assets to quickly use in web AR or in headset or mobile AR is phenomenal. And then in addition to like all the Copilot efforts that have been going on within development environments to help new and advanced developers, supercharge their development. So I think this peanut butter and jelly moment of Gen AI and, just creation has bode well for XR.
And, there's also a battleground that we're seeing in AI. So ChatGPT, of course, was the number one thing that everybody used last year. But then Google came out with Gemini, which, its main differentiation is the large vision model. So it not only understands your text, but also see things and understand it in context. And if you look at the recent announcement by Apple Ferret, the multimodal AI can help you identify objects in the room, understand the surroundings. To your point about, mixed reality and the need for spatial awareness. So all of a sudden we have this battleground that is all about making AI see, which of course is music to our ears, as in spatial computing, that's an essential part to make every experience a lot better.
Yeah, I love that. Giving computer.
And Tom, I have to go back to your report for this year that basically said that, or predicted that spatial computing will take the reign over from AI in terms of the hype this year.
Yeah, I think so. I think what I mean by that is more like the mind share of conversation. is spatial computing. Somebody reached out and said, like, I think, you know, AI will still be more wider adopted than spatial computing. Again, it depends on what you mean by spatial computing. If you mean mixed reality headsets, I'm the first to admit that this category is just coming together. There are only so many units, in particular from certain manufacturers, that are going to be on people's heads starting 2024, and we're going to be ramping up to, you know, wider adoption over the course of time. But I still believe that, you know, we're going to look back and we're going to say, what was the one big thing that people were talking about this year? And it was spatial computing. That's not to say there's not a lot of activity in Gen AI and large vision models and multimodal AI. And in many ways, they'll be connected to spatial computing, hopefully, if we use the wider umbrella term. But again, like, we look back at 2023, 100% the biggest search term was Gen AI. Look back at 2022, Metaverse, right? And so I'm just thinking about it from a hype cycle perspective. That's
well, I think it's a great wish, and you know, I'm the first to be with you on this wish. I suspect that AI still has at least 100-to-1 ratio of hype. So I suspect it's still going to be the leading thing that people talk about. But yeah, definitely within our world, people, I mean, in a sense, you know, many people in 2023 had almost like a fear from AI taking over everything. And I think that subsides now and will be more of a meld, like you said, with XR, with spatial computing. So we'll feel a bit better about the fact that the AI is so important and so up there on the hype cycle.
We'll have to check in AWE and then see how it ended up at the end of the year. I think it will also really depend on the amount of content that gets pumped through MetaQuest 3 and Apple Vision Pro ecosystem. Because as new apps get developed and new breakthroughs, new user experiences are defined, I think there's a consistent cycle now that's being generated now that the media has spatial computers on their brain, to be looking out for, you know, what's new and what looks great on video. Really, let's be honest in some ways. So, but hey, like, you know, I might be overly optimistic because, you know, we've both been in this space for a long time, and we're just eager to see it happen. So let's see if I was too bullish on this one.
Yeah, we'll see. So that actually leads us to trend number 5, which is, you know, is this the year of the Vision Pro, the Apple Vision Pro? And I think, you know, in many ways, that already started in June. You know, when it was announced, you immediately saw a change in the mood. You know, articles that were up until that day were kind of bashing VR, and nobody was even talking about AR. And all of a sudden, a lot more positive sentiments about it. In addition, you know, investments started to increase in XR. I mean, I just saw a report that like $800 million were invested in XR startups just in the second half of 2023, and that will only accelerate now. So I think regardless of the quality of this product or how good it's going to be, it's already having a huge impact, and, you know, injection of energy into the XR space, into investments. And in that sense, it's, in many ways, it is the year of the Vision Pro. And I can't believe that on Friday, 8 a.m. Pacific time, we'll be able to order this device.
Yeah, I can't believe you get to wake up at 8 a.m. and I have to wake up at 5 a.m. So that's like, there's going to be a difference there. Listen, when they announced Apple Vision Pro, I will, I admit, I cried. I really did. It was a big moment. I think if you've been in the space and you've been waiting for wearable technology, waiting for augmented reality wearables to have a real key moment, of which we've had moments before, this was one of them, and it has everything to do with Apple's status and its power within the consumer sphere. In particular, in ushering in brand new device categories. And so they're committed to spatial computing. Tim Cook tweeted and went on record to say this is the era of spatial computing has arrived. So we got to listen to him. That's kind of how I feel. This is a big year for Apple. This is a big year for Apple Vision Pro and the developers that Apple will raise up along the way, because this year is all about seeing what content gets created for the Apple Vision Pro. I think we need to see this year as a beginning and not measure it as a pass fail. That's the big thing that I would ask people to consider. The other is, this is almost 40 years to the date for the pre-order of when the Mac was debuted. By the way, the Mac in today's money would have been double the amount of the Apple Vision Pros, interestingly enough. And so this is a big deal in computing, and it's in my opinion, I think it's very poetic that it's on the anniversary-ish of the Mac, because the Vision Pro is definitely the next iteration of the PC or the Mac, and not an iPhone moment. And so we also need to be really realistic as to where we are in this cycle of spatial computing. And so thinking back to the early days of the Mac, the early days of the PC, even
the iPhone, initially it was all about let's have a device that allows us to develop things, because before you have cool things running on it, no one is going to use it. So 100%. That's, when it came out last year, I kind of call it the most polished dev kit ever. Yeah, and probably most expensive as well. But that's what it's for this year. This year is about, developers, 100,000, 200,000, maybe half a million devices will be sold at this price, mostly to people that either, enthusiasts with a lot of cash to spare, but mostly developers that will actually start creating for it. And, it's interesting that Apple is actually not gearing it only for or their classes, their courses, not just to XR developers, but to all the other, many millions of app developers. And that's a huge change, because, there's easily 1 million developers now in XR, which are super enthusiastic about it. But once you break it away and you have tens of millions of developers kind of developing for it, that will be the big change. That will see really useful applications, entertaining applications that no one has thought about before. And initially, maybe we'll have some, beer apps like the iPhone app, and what was Koi Pond, which was cool for like a minute.
So cool.
But then gradually you'll see things that are built specifically for spatial computing. And that's kind of another thing, Apple says there's 1 million apps that you can immediately use in the Vision Pro. I don't buy it. It doesn't get me excited at all. I don't want to use a 2D app on my spatial computer, right? So I'm more interested in these new things.
I think that's maybe where we might disagree a little bit. First off, I get what you mean by it looking like a developer kit from our perspective, but actually I don't think it is. I think it's very similar, even though I strongly believe this is more like the PC Mac journey, like the iPhone moment, where the iPhone, it was, what was it? It was like the internet, it was your phone, and it was like a music player all in one, right? And then the App Store came, and that's really the developer-ish kind of journey that started. And in its very similar ways, that's kind of what's happening with Vision Pro. Vision Pro is like everything you need to do on your iPad, everything you need to do with your Mac, everything you want from your Apple TV all in one. And then, yes, like we know that this device, like the iPhone, is capable of more, especially as you pointed out with the beer and the Koi, with the touchscreen, the sensors, like these unique things that were brought to the table.
But is it going to be better to use, the Vision Pro for running your Excel spreadsheet?
Well, I think for many, we're going to find out. I mean, certainly yesterday, Apple made a big push on the first, content unveiling being around entertainment, as, it's not a surprise because they very strong there. So, I had this really great opportunity with the BBC to talk about Taylor Swift as the killer app for virtual reality.
I was going to ask you that question in a second.
It was a dream of mine. And so the reason why I'm bringing it up is because I went to the Amazon Prime app in MetaQuest 3. I watched the Eras tour. It was a movie in VR. I'd done this time and time again, but it was the movie I really wanted to watch by myself in a big, movie theater. It did make it for a better experience. And so I think like in the XR space, we get very excited about true spatial apps, and because we know what the potential is. But I love Apple's baby step approach in bringing 2D into 3D. I love the return of 3D movies, 180 video, 360 video. I think these baby steps are going to allow for more brands and IP and developers to play. And then, once they get their feet wet, they're going to continue to show us just how powerful spatial computing can be.
That makes a lot of sense. We have a question whether the entire success of this year is hinged upon the Apple Vision Pro. And I want to say that, the device is probably incrementally better than what we've seen before in many ways, especially in terms of the interaction and, the ability to control scrolls and gestures and things like that, probably better than we've seen before. Very solid user experience, although I hear more and more reporting that it's heavy. It's really heavy on the head. So is the product itself going to be sufficient to drive the success of the entire spatial computing industry this year? Probably not, but I think it's more about the whole product. And that's really where Apple is stronger than anyone else. The ability to, first of all, integrate a bunch of devices. You have your iPhone, your computer, everything work perfectly together. It can copy and paste from one to the next, continuity features, all these kind of things are going to prove to be essential to make the experience a lot, like 10 times better than what we've seen with other devices. And plus the content. You mentioned the content. We saw a couple of announcements just from yesterday about a bunch of 3D movies that will be available, and even something that we're not even sure what it is, 180-degree 3D video that you can watch. To me, it sounded a bit like, the DVD extras that were a good motivation to buy a DVD, just for the extras. So we'll see how that turns out. But kind of this entire ecosystem is what will make this a lot more formidable competitor to all the other companies and devices that we're seeing in the space.
Yeah, I agree. I think, again, like I said earlier, I wouldn't want to put like a pass fail on spatial computing, mixed reality, or even the generation 1 of a spatial computer this year. I think you really need to zoom out and see, what's happening here. And it really is about encouraging content creation, I think, across the board is what's necessary.
Tom, when you get it on February 2nd,
yeah,
what's the first thing you want to do with it? What's the killer app besides, of course, watching a Swift movie?
I think that I want to witness a spatial video and relive a memory. That'll be the first thing I do. That's
why is that? What's kind of exciting about it? I mean, I've heard that from a bunch of people that have tried it, but what's
I remember one of my very first Oculus experiences being sitting in a Flickr video. It was a Flickr app, by the way, and it didn't do anything. It was just a Flickr photo, and so it was just a photo, and I was in the middle of the photo. That's all it was. But I have to say, it was such a unique perspective to experience that photo. I'll never forget it. And so just from what I've read about spatial video and its ability to make you feel like you're present in the past, I think it's going to be really emotional for a lot of people. And I think it has all the necessary ingredients to make it one of the killer apps of spatial computing, especially because it makes use of the smartphone, and there's some tie to the other device ecosystem.
Exactly. Yeah, the Looking Glass Go, which is already supporting this, and you have Zapbox and a bunch of other devices that will support this kind of format to create and to view it, and that will. We're talking a lot about standards, but this is the way to create a standard once a lot of devices are supporting it in terms of creation and use. All right, we're moving on to our next number 6 trend. We're way behind time, Tom. So let's accelerate it a bit. The race for AI glasses. It's funny. I call it AI glasses because up until now we call it AR glasses, but everything is about AI this year. So the positioning and even the naming of a lot of devices have changed. What are some of the big players that you're excited about this, that have already released product and are about to release this year?
Yeah, I think the Meta Ray-Ban is probably the big one to take a look at here. Using multimodal AI to allow for the camera on device to take a picture and then asking Meta AI about that as an input is a game changer. And I think image, audio is going to be so lucrative in its combination with AI and making wearable technology kind of come back and make sense. I would expect more of these glasses to pop up. Possibly seeing something like an Amazon Echo frame, for example, get upgraded with very similar features.
What about the OpenAI partnership with supposedly Snap or even Microsoft working on it?
There's rumors about OpenAI coming out with hardware, but I got to say something. I'm always very excited about wearables, and I think that we're going to see some good traction here, both in the screen mirroring glasses like Rocket and XReal have, as well as these AI-enabled camera glasses with no display. But we're going to see very similar use cases on the phone. And making the virtual assistants like Siri, Alexa, Google Assistant smarter is definitely the writings on the wall there through the use of multimodal AI. Samsung today, for example, made a lot of announcements around on-device use of Gemini for the Samsung S20, I think 6, or I forget what number they're on. I apologize. And so, yes, the glasses make it more natural to take a picture, and I think people are going to realize that even more so when they start doing it more on their smartphone. So I think it's really important that the smartphones get very similar upgrades in their ability to use AI and the camera and the mic. And then once we're really sold in on that, I think it's going to be a no-brainer for glasses, because the glasses provide, in-ear assistant. They also provide a way to take a picture without taking your phone out of your pocket.
So to put it into perspective, we have probably 3 key types of these glasses. We have the AI glasses really that have no display, but a camera like the Ray-Ban that can give you context about what's happening around you, can be very helpful. Then you have the mirror, the display mirror kind of things that show you a display from your computer or device where you can watch movies, and that's what XReal sold a bunch of. And then you have what I started to see a lot of non-industry reporters call a mix between the Ray-Ban and the Vision Pro, which is essentially AR glasses. Real AR glasses, like the newly announced XReal and others. Vuzix has announced one recently as well. So out of these kind of 3 categories, which one do you see as really breaking through this year?
Well, I think it depends on the target audience, but I think in the consumer sphere, we'll most likely see some continued adoption on the video glasses, I think, especially for folks that are really excited about the use case that we just talked about, the entertainment use case of watching a movie on a floating screen, especially on a plane, for example, and then maybe can't afford $3,500 or even $500, right? But they can afford video glasses. And I do suspect that we're going to continue to see a lot of excitement around wearables that feature multimodal AI, especially now that, not now that, but especially since you can make these glasses, not just sunglasses, but you can turn them into prescription glasses and, wear them for a longer period. So I would say I'm less bullish on consumer adoption of optical see-through AR glasses, but certainly in the enterprise, that would be a different story.
Okay, cool. We're moving on to our trend number 7. I think that's the discussion around the industrial metaverse. Is that the year where it happens? And we have probably like maybe 2 minutes to talk about this, but I want to say it's interesting because, you know, after the hype around the metaverse in 2022, 2023, nobody used metaverse in their pitches anymore. I didn't see much of that, except for Web3 pitches that still mention that. And enterprise. Enterprise, you know, it's still cool to say enterprise metaverse, maybe because the enterprise is always kind of a step behind consumer. I don't know. But what are, you know, really in like 1 minute, what are the most interesting things you're expecting to see in this year in terms of the industrial metaverse?
You know, after something gets at the top of the hype cycle, it tends to move into the enterprise and get to work. That's what we typically see. So the metaverse, you know, really having a strong moment within the enterprise is not surprising. Also, you know, building a metaverse of the world is a big endeavor, but building a metaverse of a manufacturing plant is something that you can figure out how to do. And so I think that makes sense. So you're not boiling the ocean, to use that term. So these persistent virtual spaces that, you know, allow for virtual simulation and modeling, remote operation, collaboration. You know, we actually saw a lot of activity, a lot of announcements last year around this, and including a lot of use cases and companies that were adopting industrial metaverse solutions, like Mercedes-Benz, like BMW, like Boeing. Certainly, you know, Siemens, PTC, NVIDIA are strong players within this space. And so, you know, there's always a lot happening behind the scenes that don't get as much limelight because they're at work in the enterprise, where there's not a lot of PR around that. And so,
yeah, you know, if you look at the past 10 years, most of the revenue that startups could expect in XR was in enterprise, you know, in remote assistance and collaboration and field service and warehouse picking and all these scenarios that, you know, there's probably over 1 million people that use it every day today, even with Google Glass, and most people are not even aware of it. In addition to, you know, RealWear and Vuzix and so on. So it's still happening, but we see more of training. Digital twins, I think, is reaching a boiling point. I mean, it's been around for a few years now, but now it feels like there's a wider adoption. And that leads me to the next point, which is big trend number 8, big tech in XR. And just wanted to do kind of a quick roundup of what's happening among the big players. And the first one that is really related to the metaverse, the industrial metaverse, is Microsoft. You know, on one hand, we saw Microsoft reorganize the HoloLens team, pretty much getting rid of most of the engineers, closed alt space, as we said before, shut down mixed reality windows. But on the other hand, XR is currently connected to the top 3 Microsoft initiatives: Azure, Dynamics 365, and AI. You know, they're integrating field service, remote assistance, simulation to Dynamics 365, which is their enterprise solution. And Azure is now being used in a big way for digital twins. So that's kind of using that strategic initiative for a big XR use in the industry. And even Teams, you know, they're now focusing on adding avatars to Teams. So all of these things combined with the fact that it seems like they're pushing a lot more effort into Microsoft Mesh, I think is going to reposition Microsoft in the XR space, not as as a hardware provider, although, you know, HoloLens is still working on HoloLens in the army with that huge deal, but mostly as a software company, which, you know, is how we're kind of used to thinking about Microsoft.
Yeah, and their Microsoft suite is available, I think, in both Vision Pro and Quest 3, if I recall correctly. Those announcements were made. So yeah, it's interesting.
You know, maybe the quote that summarizes best is Satya Nadella, that said just a few weeks ago that it's pretty amazing when you bring these two technologies, AI and MR, together. So although, you know, he's now all thinking about AI with OpenAI, he sees the connection, that meld with XR, which is really cool. Let's talk about Google. Google also recently reorganized and laid off a bunch of folks in the hardware division. And it seems like they're also refocusing on software, you know, kind of trying to revive the Android partnership with Qualcomm and Samsung, now on an XR headset. And the thing is, they have a lot of some of the best XR technology out there, from a lot of experience with Tango and Google Glass and visual search for 15 years now, and AR Core. How do you see them kind of coalescing everything into really taking a leadership position?
Yeah, I think we saw a little bit of maybe a sneak peek of how they might be playing in the mixed reality space with how they're also rolling out their playbook on AI with Samsung in their continued partnerships with their hardware manufacturers. And so I would assume that we may potentially see that as the way that Google manifests later this year with this expected Samsung Google Qualcomm device that is about to come out. And so,
speaking of Qualcomm, another big tech company, it's, in one word, it's everywhere. Every single device that comes out has the chip inside, except for Apple. And it's almost like people say, of course it has it. It's natural, and that's amazing, an amazing achievement for Qualcomm. NVIDIA is also exploding. It's everywhere. It's kind of the backend for AI and everything that has to do with XR built with AI. Sony, you just mentioned, made a big move at CES, so curious to see where that takes them. Samsung as well, a big promise for a new device this year. So a lot of excitement around big tech. And that leads us to just 1 minute for number 9. What can go wrong? With all this excitement and promises, 2024 could be a breakthrough year, but what could go wrong? What are some of the concerns that you have this year?
I think setting too high of expectations is the biggest thing that could go wrong, and just getting ahead of ourselves and thinking that we're at a place where we're not. And so the rest of it is I think we're right on time. We have the hardware, we have the development kits, we have the developers that are interested, and it is a time for experimentation and play to find the new interaction paradigm, to figure out what content can be created, what content resonates. We, especially on the mixed reality headset side, will have AR glasses on consumers' faces. This is a big deal. We already have that with MetaQuest 3, and we're going to have more with other devices. And so I think it's just understanding that this is a very important big step in a journey towards this era of spatial computing, and not thinking that 2024 is when spatial computing has officially arrived and will be adopted across the mainstream.
Yeah, I suggest one rule on maintaining safety, privacy, and security. It cannot be an afterthought. It has to be built into the product, and the business model has to support it. Otherwise, it's never going to work. And by the way, in that regard, Apple has an advantage because they put privacy kind of as a top thing in their positioning, and they're sticking to it. So that's going to be interesting. I'm going to ask everybody to extend this session for another 5 minutes. Hopefully, you can stick around, because we have a number 10, which is this year the year of more kind of peak XR investments. So that's kind of how we conclude our 10 trends for this year. I get a lot of questions from startup founders as well as investors about what to expect. What are some of the hardest sectors? How to position your product? If we're not using Metaverse and AI like we've seen last year, what should we use? Spatial computing as the main term, right? So what kind of advice can you give?
Well, I think having the right terms to get that email opened makes sense. But as always, the best thing that you can do as a startup is focus on a real problem that needs to be solved and uniquely solve that problem, and not try to do too many things at once and just have focus. And so I think there is a blue ocean opportunity within the mixed reality headset category that's coming together. Certainly the time is now to start to play, start to experiment, understand what these devices are capable of, and then start to think about the users that are wearing those devices and how you can enhance their life, how you can help them be more productive or entertain them or connect them. I'm certain we're going to see some really standout examples that not only get created, but get funded this year.
Yeah, I totally agree. So the fundamentals still remain. You have to show traction, show value, show a path to revenue. And speaking of revenue, you know, although the iOS market was always smaller than the Android market, it delivered more revenue for iOS developers. And I think we can expect that to repeat with the Apple Vision Pro, even though, you know, maybe there will be just 100 or 200,000 devices in the market. I expect these people to spend a lot on applications, on things that run on this device. And I think, you know, for every startup, it's probably really important to look into the Vision Pro, or at least support it in some way, because that could prove to be a very lucrative way to just, you know, make some revenue in the short term.
Well, people are already, developers are already making money on within the MetaQuest ecosystem. And so there's just now more, I think, opportunities to reach more consumers, which also makes for a larger opportunity for content. And so when we see more headsets come to the table, this will also widen the opportunity. That's why a category is very important. But there's already some really healthy proof points in MetaQuest that I think are good signals.
All right, folks, that's the 10 trends that we want to cover today. There's a bunch more that we didn't have the time to cover. But Tom, I'm going to give you a chance for one more trend, 1 minute or one sentence on that trend. So what is it going to be? WebXR, natural interaction, wearable tech, avatars, fashion? What is it?
They're all so powerful. I would say I would love to shine a light on WebXR and the web. Certainly, you know, there has been so much activity already in the mobile web browser within augmented reality, and we're seeing also an opportunity on the headset side. So without being able to get into further detail, I just would love the community to really put their eyes on the browser, the web, and understanding how integral it is in moving us into this next era.
Thank you, Tom. Let's put up the 10 trends just to remind everybody the journey that we've been through in the last hour. And Tom, if people want to read more about what you wrote, your reports, where should they find it?
I'm always active on LinkedIn. So please just find me on LinkedIn. I have a couple posts pinned to my profile. And then please DM me anytime on LinkedIn if you want to collaborate.
And subscribe to his reports. I mean, every AR News, the end of year report, the beginning of the new year report. These are massive works of analysis and collection of everything that happened. It's like it's a book by itself. Thank you, Tom, for doing this. Thank you for joining us today. If you want to see these 10 trends in action and even maybe influence them in some way, why don't you join one of the AW events that will take place around this year? Let's put up the slide. There's going to be one we're going to LA for the first time for the 15th year of AWE. So that's going to be exciting. Also in Singapore in August and Vienna in October. So you should always be able to find a nearby event, probably the biggest that we've ever had in this breakthrough year. So would love to have you be part of it. Call for proposals is currently open. And also the best ticket rates are currently available. If you go to awxr.com, you can get ahead and get ready to prepare for a breakthrough year for XR and spatial computing. Tom, once again, thank you. It's been so awesome to have you again with me on this 1 hour. We should do this more often.
100%.
And Goopy, thanks for running the show behind the scenes.
Thanks,
Thank you all for joining us. Tom, any final words?
I just want to say thank you. And I also want to just say I saw the news of our fellow community builder, John Oakes from SVVR has passed away. And I just want to spend just a moment to pay respects and thank him for everything that he did for our community. He's going to be very much missed. He was a very kind man that did a lot for XR. So We'll miss you, John.
Absolutely. True believer, and SVVR did a great job. Hopefully the organization will continue and the community will thrive. Thank you, John, for all you've done. Thank you, everybody, and let's go spatial.
Bye, guys.